We are now well into this series, and it's starting to get very exciting. Today I'm going to talk about my top 10 favourite songs in The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker. Before we start, welcome to my channel. The Kaiiiba Clan is growing, streams have been crazier than ever, and my YouTube content has been constantly improving. As always, thank you for being a part of this. I still can't quite believe the growth we are having after just a few moments of sharing all of this. If you are new here, consider joining the Kaiiiba Clan. All you need to do is subscribe and join my Discord, the link is below. I play all kinds of games and stream regularly, as well as post daily shorts content, so honestly, what is there to lose? Now, let's talk about The Wind Waker's original soundtrack. After the large success of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, it's safe to say that Nintendo really wanted to take Zelda to the next level. The release of the Nintendo GameCube in 2001 was around 5 times stronger than the Nintendo 64. This allowed for much more in terms of having a complex soundtrack with better quality and variety. Koji Kondo, who worked on Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, would once again return to work on the soundtrack for The Wind Waker, alongside Kenta Nagata, Hajime Wakai, and Toru Miganishi. Sorry if my pronunciation was off. A larger team of composers to work on something much bigger and more ambition than ever before meant nothing but a masterpiece was waiting. Wind Waker took a complete U-turn from the previous 2 3D Zelda titles, and it's safe to say with the new hardware available, fans expected a more realistic Zelda, especially after the tech demo released in 2000. However, fans were initially very disappointed with the more childish cartoon-like graphics the Wind Waker had to offer. Little did anyone know at the time, this game would age like fine wine. The art style is truly timeless, and the soundtrack would become so much of a success that we would continue to hear parts of it in future Zelda titles. The soundtrack in Wind Waker had to adapt a completely new style in order to fit the new aesthetic, and I believe the composers achieved this with flying colours. We even got to hear some songs that were in Ocarina of Time make a return in a completely new style, which was refreshing as well as nostalgic. I love this soundtrack. I also find it very interesting that despite the more childish, vibrant theme of The Wind Waker, the composers still managed to create some dark, atmospheric soundtracks that still fit in with the game so seamlessly. I would go as far to say that this is the soundtrack that gives me some of the most nostalgia from any soundtrack I remember from my childhood. If I said that I thought as this series goes on the list would become easier to produce, I would be lying. It's quite the opposite. There is no bad soundtrack in this game, and I will stand by that opinion. I feel like my personal top 10 here might surprise a lot of you, and as a disclaimer, this is my list, so your favourite songs may not have made it. I'll be completely honest and tell you that if you asked me in a week's time for my top 10 favourite songs in The Wind Waker, my list might be completely different. So please tell me your favourite songs, and give me your opinions in the comments below. With that being said, let's take a listen to my top 10 favourite songs in The Wind Waker. Number 10. Hyrule Castle. Bearing in mind the setting of this story, we understand Hyrule was flooded and lost in time. Upon arrival at Hyrule Castle after completing the Tower of the Gods, we are greeted with a very eerie track. Once we bring the castle back to the current time, we see it reanimate and come back to life. The soundtrack portrays the feeling of a great castle belonging to the royal family so well, but in contrast to its former glory, it's now riddled with darkness. The lower tones of the cello really amplifies this. The higher pitched symphonies and bells create a magical atmosphere, which fits nicely and really brings home that royal feeling. The track ends off with some choir singing, which once again reminds us that this place is ancient and royal. It's empty and lost in time. All of this together paints such a picture that if you closed your eyes, you could probably imagine exactly how the castle looks without even needing to see it. Number 9. Mur Battle Theme. After going through the Wind Temple, you find yourself in the boss room. It's large, ambient, full of sand, and completely empty. But then, the boss Mulgara slowly emerges, and it's safe to say that this is going to be one hell of a battle. Once we start, the music kicks in, and we're greeted with the bells ringing, which perfectly fits the grand feeling of such a large boss. The theme is so unique. Its main synth track is so reminiscent of fantasy that when the other instruments start to slowly creep in, we really get this feeling of fighting a mythical, legendary creature that turned out to be real. There's a sense of urgency to this soundtrack, which I love. This is because you will notice if you stand in the sand for too long, you will sink, so you have to stay quick on your feet. The theme is special and catchy. I will always enjoy this boss fight because I get to listen to this legendary track, which is why it ranks number 9 on my list. Number 8, Fairy's Fountain. Some of you are probably sitting there saying, finally, Kaiiiba mentioned the Fairy Fountain theme. I'll be honest, across all Zelda games the Fairy Fountain theme is great and, well, timeless. But I feel like the one in the Wind Waker is the best overall. The harp is so relaxing and beautifully played, whilst the choir singing creates the perfect magical vibe that really highlights this experience of meeting the fairies. Every time I go to one of the fairy fountains, I feel like I'm suddenly in another world that is full of energy and dreams, something unreal. Once again, this theme portrays the area so well, something you will hear a lot of in this soundtrack. It is also similar to previous Zelda songs that lack in being complex but still shine in being incredibly good soundtracks whilst keeping it simple. Number 7, Illusionary Room. Now we move towards the climax of the game, and as the player we know we're close to finally facing Ganondorf. The last segments of the Wind Waker are so good at building up to the very end, and one way it achieves this is by the soundtracks it uses in these areas. The Illusionary Room theme is eerie and unusual. It gives us this feeling that we're in a very dark and mysterious place. The track sounds distorted, it's offbeat, and has an irregular theme that's all muddled up. This perfectly fits the setting. The puzzles in this area of the game can be very confusing and disorientating, to the point you end up backtracking and doing things that really aren't the answer at all. The track stands out, as it's so unusual, but I also love how that when you fight Phantom Ganon, it then resumes and leads you to believe that maybe you didn't go the right way. The track is simple, in the sense there's not many instruments. The only variations is when it gets slightly faster and higher pitched, which continues to make us feel like we're getting closer and closer to finally meeting Ganondorf, which is why I absolutely love this song. Number 6, Ganondorf Battle Theme. After the vast puzzles and challenges to meet Ganondorf, there is so much build up that it must end in something huge, right? The answer is as simple as yes. This setting is one of my favourite settings in any Zelda game. On top of Ganondorf's castle under the sea, but the sea falling all around us, we face off against the game's antagonist in a final showdown. The start of the theme ramps things up instantly, and we know straight away that this is gonna be a big fight. The track has an underlying beat that is so fast to match this version of Ganondorf's fighting style. I absolutely love the fact that in this battle, Ganondorf's regular theme can be heard playing at various points with different instruments. The choir makes this feel like Ganon is some kind of god. Well, I suppose he is the Demon King after all. I'm very surprised this song didn't make the top 3 on my list, because it's just so good. And for a final boss battle, this track delivers in full force, and it could even be argued, in my opinion, as the best final boss theme in any Zelda game. Number 5, Goden Battle Theme. 2 boss themes in a row, but 2 entirely different vibes. The Tower of the Gods is such an incredible temple, and serves as a trial for Link. Goden is the final challenge Link must face, and this theme couldn't be any more fitting. The overall vibe feels very futuristic and technological, which fits so well, as there is some sort of ancient energy within the Tower of the Gods, and Goden. The way the arena lights up in vibrant colours complements the song with its vibrant sounds. The organ gives us a very spooky feeling, not an evil one, which adds up as Goden is not evil, he's just a challenge. I absolutely love when the soundtrack ramps up. I'm pretty sure it's programmed to happen when Goden charges up a beam of fire to chase you around with. The beat gets faster and the organ intensifies, which makes us understand that this challenge is brutal. The song then eases off a little, as things slow down and we're given the time to plan ahead our next move. Overall, such a cool soundtrack that is so unique that it really had to have a spot on my list, which is why it ranks at number 5. Number 4, Legendary Hero Theme. The Wind Waker starts in a slightly different way compared to other Zelda games, by actually telling us the narrative in a storyboard format. Whenever I start this game and those first notes ring out, my hairs stand up. I feel hooked into following the story and preparing myself for the adventure that is about to unfold. The song is very simple, although it has many different vibes as the tone of the story changes. You really feel like you're engulfed in a fantasy. Don't even get me started on the moment the story starts to talk about the one true hero that will save the land, and we hear the classic Legend of Zelda theme play with all its might. It's on another level. The way it then slows down and explains the complications and how things got sour is great, because it contrasts so well in how it goes on to explain that the new hero, you, is yet to come. At this point, the song reverts back to the beginning, making the player fully understand that this is our adventure, and we can make whatever of it we want. I don't think the composers could have done a better job in readying the player for such an incredible adventure. This opening theme is perfect, and probably my favourite in any Zelda game. Number 3. Earth Temple. You probably didn't see this one coming, right? But you could have probably guessed already that I have a real interest in darker themes, and this song is a perfect example of one of those. For such a vibrant game, this theme does a perfect job in creating a dark and creepy atmosphere. Ambience plays a huge part in this soundtrack. There's not much going on other than the constant beat, the occasional percussion melody, and the slow didgeridoo that fades in and out. Yes, that strange spring-like instrument is really called that. The way the instruments then suddenly play a very unsettling tone makes us feel like we are somewhere truly evil. Then, what I can only describe as the sound of scraping metal heightens our awareness and makes us alert. This is followed by an unusual howling or whistling instrument. It's very paranormal and actually quite scary for a game that, on the surface, is so bright. I love this theme because of that reason. It contrasts in comparison to the rest of the game. It's just so good that I can't help but compliment the composers for their incredible work in pulling off a soundtrack like this in a game that's set in such a different light. Number 2. The Great Sea. You can relax now. This song just had to be on my list. The main idea of Zelda is adventure, and in The Wind Waker, we are encouraged to explore the Great Sea to discover its secrets. The composers cooked, and they delivered a masterpiece. The orchestra of instruments gives us the feeling that the sea is large and full of mystery, that is all at our fingertips to be uncovered. I remember when I was a child, setting sail for my next destination to see something off in the distance, only to end up sidetracking and taking 3 hours on a trip that should have taken 5 minutes. The great part about this song is the fact that there are slight variants that merge into it perfectly, allowing it to work in all kinds of scenarios. You hear this song so many times while playing the game, which would lead anyone to believe that the song gets repetitive and annoying, right? The answer is no, and if you ask me why, I'd have to say it must be something to do with the feeling of actually being on an adventure, not just playing a game. I don't really know of many other songs that can capture the feeling of adventure like this, and after all this time, the song still holds up today as one of the best themes in all of Zelda. Number 1. Dragon Roost Island. Let's continue to talk about perfection with number 1. The fan favourite Dragon Roost Island is on an entire different level. The way the tropical style beat kicks in and leads up to a flute melody that will be forever loved by all Zelda fans is a blessing to my ears. I can't help but smile when I hear this song, as I then feel a huge rush of nostalgia, which I'm sure many of you can relate to. If I hear this song, I have to admit, it will be in my head for the rest of the day, and I'll be whistling it to myself while I think about Dragon Roost Island. If I had to relate it to a feeling, I'd have to say paradise, just like Sora's domain in Ocarina of Time, but executed in a completely different way. The song is so good that while I'm writing this, I keep finding myself speechless and just end up listening to the soundtrack. I think if I was to make a list of my top 10 songs from the entire Zelda franchise, this song would be guaranteed top 5, maybe even top 3. Dragon Roost Island is yet another example where everything was executed to pure perfection, creating a track that's so good that it would even be heard in future Zelda titles. All of this makes it a clear number 1 on my list, with no doubts whatsoever. To finish off, The Wind Waker took Zelda into yet another direction with its vast change in style. This meant its soundtrack would have to adapt in order to fit the aesthetic of the game. With more composers and better hardware, the soundtrack we got was arguably one of the best soundtracks in any game to have ever existed. I will always love this soundtrack and go back to it while I'm chilling out. I will say a lot of it could be pinpointed to nostalgia, but certainly most of it comes down to how incredibly good this soundtrack actually is. What do you think of my top 10? Do you agree? Please let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. It helps me grow and ensures you won't miss my next video. Top 10 songs in The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. My all-time favourite Zelda game. But that will do it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.